This is Stu Ellis reporting on behalf of the Illinois Soybean Association Checkoff Program. Soybean farmers cannot seem to win the weed race. Rotating herbicides has failed, and so has tank mixing herbicides, says University of Illinois weed specialist Aaron Hager.
Most of what we're doing now is dealing with non-target site resistance mechanisms. And in most cases, the one that the weeds are now using is enhanced metabolism. So in other words, they take the herbicide up, but they're able to metabolize it or break it down before it causes a lethal effect. They're mimicking what the crops are doing. The reason we don't kill corn with atrazine, corn metabolizes it, breaks it down. The reason we're not killing water hemp with HPPD inhibitors with group 15 products is that they break it down too quickly. So the tank mix work was based on target site. We have to accept the fact that there are no data anywhere that describe what is the best strategy for metabolic herbicide resistance. There's actually accumulating evidence that tank mixtures would actually favor the evolution of what is generally called a generalist resistance mechanism, i.e. enhanced metabolism. If we use the same herbicide over and over and over again, a single herbicide, that favors a target site resistance. But if we use combinations, that's now going to favor metabolic resistance. And that's a very important distinction to make because, again, we may actually be favoring metabolic resistance if all we're willing to do is tank mix products together. Now, we also state in a recent article that we're going to continue to treat virtually every acre with a herbicide. We have other species that are still sensitive to many of our commercially available products. But we have to come to the realization that we need to do something in addition to that, because the only certainty that we have right now is that if there's no seed at the end of the growing season, there's no change in the frequency of these resistance mechanisms. If we allow a few escapes at the end of the year, they won't plug up the combine, but they may actually, those progeny may actually now contain another or new resistance mechanism that we haven't seen before.
So, what's the best thing that farmers can do, best or variety of things that farmers can do to make sure that we don't have those escapes at the end of the year?
There's a lot of different tactics that can be used, but I think the first and most important thing is to accept the fact that we cannot solve a problem that was caused by using herbicides simply by using herbicides differently. It's not going to work. Nature will prove that again and again. And so, we have to accept the fact that resistance in water hemp is not just to our foliar applied products, it's also very, very common to our soil applied products. Now, the way it gets manifest there is the length of residual control gets less and less. I went back and looked at some data that we generated back about 1996 and 1997. We used a soil applied PPO herbicide. At 6 weeks after planting, we were still 90-some% control. It was absolutely fantastic, one of the best products that we had at that time. When you look at that same PPO material at the same exact rate, but now applied to a population that is known to be PPO resistant, by 6 weeks you're less than 40% control. So again, that residual gets less and less and less. If we allow these females, these escaped females, to continue to produce seed at the end of the year, what's going to happen is that we're going to select for other genes in these populations, that eventually we may reach a point where we don't have any residual control. They may be able to metabolize it so effectively that instead of 3 weeks of good residual control, maybe we get 3 days now. That's why it's very, very important to recognize that these survivors have gone through another cycle of selection. We don't know what genes they contain. We don't know how they're going to be regulated the next year. But we do know if there are seed, there's that potential for something to change the next year.
Aaron Hager says farmers will have to find an alternative to herbicides to get those last few escapes out of the field before harvest.
Yeah, I mean, walking beans, it could be cultivation, it could be the electrocution. When we have a height differential between the crop and the weed itself, it could be harvest weed seed control. any of these techniques that reduce that total seed load are certainly going to be an advantage to us years and years down the road.
That's your soybean update. I'm Stu Ellis. To learn more about the Illinois Soybean Association and the checkoff that pays off, go to ilsoy.org.